such a treat for me to have you here, Commissioner Susan Whitaker.
Thank
you are the Commissioner of Tourist Development here in Tennessee. And you know, tourism is a big business. A lot of folks don't realize that. It's like over $15 million and over $1 million in annual tax revenue, is that right?
Yeah, in fact, we're up to $16.2 billion.
Wow.
That was the latest number in 2013, and we're looking forward to some other numbers coming out the end of summer, so hopefully we'll blow by that. And then it's been, for the last 7 years, it's generated over $1 billion in state and local sales tax revenues. So it's a huge business in Tennessee. It's $2 trillion in impact as far as the entire travel industry with the United States. But I will be the first to say I had no idea that it was an industry at all. You know, it's kind of a, I think been looked at, it's that little vacation fuzzy thing that you take and
feel good.
Yeah, and so what's that got to do with, you know, real business and industry, and to just see the impact it's had on communities. You only have to go into a few places around Tennessee, like Pigeon Forge, to see an area that was dirt poor. You know, Dolly Parton's from Sevier County, and she'll tell you there was nothing there. And it's been because the Great Smoky Mountain National Park being there, millions of people coming every year. Smart people said, hey, this might be something we could develop, and it's now a $1.6 billion industry for that county alone. It's what builds their schools. It's what, you know, puts new band uniforms on their kids. And it's just fun to be part of an industry that puts a smile on people's faces while they're giving you their money.
I hadn't thought about that, but it's true. Everybody's really, it is a fun industry, isn't it?
It is. And I mean, you're making memories. My best memories are usually memories from when my family was on vacation. You know, that's when everybody, now we have the moments where I'm remembering duking it out with my 3 siblings in the backseat of a, you know, Chevy Nomad.
Right.
Going back, my dad only did road trips. He would not fly. My mom would take us on some, you know, trips on a plane, but it was just, I think it's why there's a part of me that just loves to get in a car and go.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that, because you're not from Tennessee. You have roots in Tennessee, but you grew up in Chicago, right?
Yeah, you can tell from this lovely nasal twang. I'm not from around here. I wish I had a little bit more of that beautiful southern accent. But I am from the south south side of Chicago. But there's a Tennessee connection.
Right.
My sister's middle name is Sevier because my great-great-great-great-great-grandfather is John Sevier, who was the first governor of Tennessee. And my dad was very proud of that. His mom she was Maud Sevier Duckworth, and I mean, it actually, when I came to East Tennessee to work for Dolly Parton way back in the mid-90s, I landed in Sevier County and was like, is this like John Sevier, first governor of Tennessee? And they're like, how would a Yankee like you know that? And I said, well, I'm related to him somehow. Well, in East Tennessee, they have a historical society there, and they just, you know, went out and they showed me the exact genealogy, and I'm a first family of Tennessee. I have a little, you know, placard, all my kids do and my grandkids, and it's really exciting to see how much people from Tennessee value their heritage and their culture and their history. And I think that's really part of what makes this such a special destination for people who are looking for a really neat vacation. There's plenty of fun things to do. You go to Dollywood if you're looking for that kind of thing. Go hike the national park or across, you know, I mean, there's so many places to go and hike and bike and get out on a neat river and have a great experience. And Grand Ole Opry, Graceland, all those things. But I think there's something about getting out on the back roads, getting up like into the Upper Cumberland and just seeing what makes Tennessee really Tennessee, the history of it. And that's what I do when I go on my vacations, is I want to get out on the back roads. I want to find out about the people who live there, what their heritage is, what's made them be like they are. And, you know, the music that's in Tennessee is so spectacular. How did that happen? Where did that come from? You know, that whole culture and heritage to me is a fascinating story, and part of the reason that millions of people come here every year is because of our culture and heritage. So, you know, that was my first taste of it, to see how interested people were that I was really related to John Sevier, the first governor of Tennessee. And it's just, I think it's fun for me, and being a person that has seen from my high school days on, my faith is very important to me, and seeing God's hand in my life. I don't think it's a coincidence that I work for the governor of Tennessee. And I never would have plotted this career path.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that, because this isn't your first governor. Of course, Governor Bill Haslam appointed you as Commissioner of Tourist Development in 2011, but you also were appointed by Governor Bredesen.
Mm-hmm. He's
right?
the one that took the first chance with me, because I had no political experience. I get this crazy call from my boss at the time over at Dollywood, Ken Bell, who was Senior Vice President, and I was Vice President of Marketing. He said, we're about to have the weirdest conversation we've ever had. And I'm thinking, okay, what's this about? This is right around Christmas. And I'm thinking, please don't let me go. Yeah. And he said, you're on a short list of candidates to be on the governor's cabinet as the Commissioner of Tourist Development. And I was, how did that happen? He said, well, actually I found out about it about 3 weeks ago, but I thought it was such a long shot, I never even told you. And so, well, thanks, for that encouraging, So, as it turned out, I had to put a resume together, shoot it over to the folks that were on what they would call that transition team. There were 5 folks that Governor Bredesen had put in charge of finding the commissioners that were going on his cabinet. And because of some experience that I'd had with the Pigeon Forge Tourism Advisory Council, and because I'd been through Leadership Severe, there were 2 contacts that were on that particular committee to find a tourist development person that knew me and said, this would be a person that we think you should at least take a look at. And it was total shock to me. I had just been married 8 months before that, remarried. And so I called up my new husband and said, well, this thing that just happened, what would you think? Should I go over? And he said, well, is it something you'd like to do? And I said, well, I've always complained that, state government doesn't have any impact whatsoever on tourism around here. And, if I'm going to complain about it, maybe I should at least go have a conversation with the governor. He said, yeah, go ahead. What are the odds? So another ringing endorsement in my ear. I get on, we go over and I meet with the transition team. They were interested, which surprised me. And then they said, well, we'd like you to come back and meet the governor. And so the following Monday I did. And I will tell you, Phil Bredesen is one of the most brilliant people I've ever met. And once I found this out that day, once he's had a chance to feel out a situation, and he loves to solve problems. I don't know if you know his background. He has his degree in physics from Harvard. It's not a typical political background. A businessman. And he was all about getting the job done, all about what can you do to market the state, how can you get more people here spending more time and money. And I thought, if that's what you're looking for, I would be interested. If it's some kind of political thing where I've got to, he said, no, if I was looking for political, you wouldn't be there. It's sitting in that chair. And I went, okay, that makes sense. So he said, is this something that sounds like something you would like to do? And, kind of just tossed that out after we talked for about an hour and a half. And I said, well, I would. And he said, well, congratulations, you have the job. And I'm
no
like,
way.
Oh my gosh. Once he makes a decision, that's it. And so I had the fun of going down the hill back to the Hilton Suites and to tell my husband, who said, how'd it go? And I went, it went well.
Well, yes. I'm the commissioner.
Yeah.
That was it.
Actually, I have the job. And to his credit, he just went, well, I guess we need to find you a place here in Tennessee. So we started looking. I had a whole week to find one and found the little apartment in Franklin, where we later decided we would actually stay in Franklin. I like kind of being outside, a little bit further away from right in the middle of all that political stuff. So work is done, I can get home and really enjoy life and with my husband and family. And I love Franklin. It's a great little historic town, another one of those places in Tennessee, just like you'll find all across Tennessee.
To stop and visit.
It's just unique and just so special. So I have had the time of my life. And for Governor Bill Haslam, who I knew when he was mayor, because we did our Sustainable Tourism Summit in 2008, and he was mayor at the time, and I went and introduced myself. I mean, I think I'd met him once before at a Friends of the Smokies thing, but didn't know him. And I didn't want to bring something to town that he was not aware of, wanted to invite him to participate. And he was just a jewel, because he said, you need publicity. Let me call up the paper, got me in to see the publisher, literally went with me on my next trip to get in to see the publisher, who then started to do a series of stories on the summit leading up to it, and then brought me to one of the biggest stations over there and brought me in to meet the general manager of that and one of their reporters, lead reporters. She started to do stories that led up to it. So we ended up with over 500 people at that summit, which was the first statewide tourism summit on sustainability that had ever been done. And later I was asked by California when they did theirs a year later if I would come out and show them and speak to their group. So it kind of put Tennessee on the map for that. And I attribute his interest and his getting involved, which he sure didn't have to do. Didn't know he was going to run for governor. Had no clue he would run. In fact, I don't even know if he probably thought about it, but he didn't declare for until another year went by. So
well, he and Bredesen are both great businessmen.
They are,
so
and
they saw that, right?
Great deal of respect for each other, meet with each other on a regular basis, and very, it's interesting watching the two of them. Different personalities. I'm sure they have differences as far as some of their policies, but for the most part, it's very pragmatic. You have common sense approach. You don't spend more than you have. You want to make sure that you're developing your economic base. You want to make sure that you have got your education getting better, because these policies that have just been voted on and all these kinds of things that are out there now, the Common Core and stuff, that started with Governor Bredesen's administration. All that implementation, race to the top, and it's been carried along, and it's now Governor Haslam that's carrying that forward. And I think both of them recognize that until we get that economic, that educational piece right, we're not going to get the economic piece right. And it's certainly of interest to me because of my grandkids being here in Tennessee.
Well, let's talk about your family. You have a fairly large family, right?
Well, I have 2 boys. When I say boys, 2 men that are my sons that are considerably older than boys, and then I have 5 grandchildren, and the 2 oldest ones actually live with me in Franklin.
Do they like living in Tennessee?
Yes, they do.
That's great.
They have very different interests. The older one is totally into music. That's his life. He's always got some new group I've never heard of. And he just discovered Bonnaroo. He's 16, and he's not going to Bonnaroo this year. Sorry about that, Christian. But I mean, he absolutely, he's so excited that these different groups that I've never heard of are all going to be there. The headliners are kind of like, yeah, that's your age.
Yeah.
But I mean, he is so into these different stages. But all the kids around him, it is second nature for them to have gotten a guitar, or they all jam together. He now has a thing on his computer, GarageBand. He's always making this new electronic music. He's excited. He's had 3,000 likes for something he created.
Wow.
And that's part of the curriculum that he has at this school called Middle College High School. They're changing their name this fall to Renaissance High School. And it's a specific track. Again, that speaks to me to the emphasis that's put on the importance of the music and culture of our region, and nurturing that and giving kids who want to get into the creative arts like that, giving them a chance to do that from an early stage. And it certainly has influenced him, I think, in a very positive way.
Well, how do you think the public can support your work? Do you think the public has a role in tourist development?
I do, and part of it is they're doing it already. If I can get somebody here, they're going to have a great time, and they will tell you, I find the friendliest people I've ever found here. And I know you hear Southern hospitality, and I've lived all over the country, and it is different here. It's different. And I have experienced that personally when I moved here. Have this horrible Yankee accent. I expected to not have this warm welcome. It was, come on over, it was, people love to show guests hospitality. It's just second nature. If somebody's lost, I was looking for a place where I was going to be speaking last week at a country club in Hendersonville, right outside of Nashville. And so I pulled off I had really gotten goofed up using Google Maps. And it was just like, don't do this again. And I pulled off to the side, and this gentleman was walking down this driveway, and he looked in his mailbox, and then all of a sudden I realized he's just come over to the side of my car, and I put my window down, and he goes, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how I'm going to get to this." And so it turned out he knew exactly where the country club was I was supposed to be speaking, and he gave me directions on how to get there. But I'm just thinking, where I grew up, you would not have approached anybody in a car, that was just on the side of the road, let alone really want to help them out. And it was just another example to me of that's just second nature to the people here. They would not think of not helping somebody who looked like they needed some help. And I mean, we always have clunkers out there. There's always jerks in every,
that's
society.
Everywhere.
But for the most part, I have had nothing but a warm welcome, and there isn't anybody who sounds less like a Southerner than I do. Although I go to Chicago, and they say, "You don't sound like you're from here." And I'm like, I'm right in the middle here. But I just absolutely love the people here, and I think that's part of what can people do? when you're just yourselves,
Be authentic.
you're being authentic, and that's who you are, and it's such a welcoming thing, and people really do enjoy that. It's not like this everywhere. It truly is not like this everywhere. That, and I think just supporting their local communities, tourism opportunities. And there are convention visitors bureaus, there's chambers of commerce that do this, and there's an upper Cumberland Regional, Ruth Dial does a great job with
Tourism.
that. Tourism. They really need the support of their funding authorities, and there's a variety of different types of funding authorities, because we have programs at the state level that kind of branch out. We have the Discover Tennessee Trails and Byways, 16 trails go, and you have the Promised Land through here. It goes throughout all of Tennessee, all 95 counties, but we have other programs that they can, for a very low amount of money, tap into. And that's one of the things I would do if I were sitting in one of these communities, is look at what the state has made available. It's not free to them, and it certainly wasn't free, because it's what we use the appropriations that the state gives us, the governor proposes in his budget, and then the General Assembly has to approve. And it's one of those things where I would look at all that infrastructure, look at the website, look at the vacation guide, all the things that I could plug into that's going to get our information out in front of that traveling public. And just, you need some dollars to be able to do that.
Sure.
And you need a good website. Social media has changed everything.
Yes. And you have a great website.
We do.
You guys have really worked so well on your website.
Thank you. That's so nice of you to say. tnvacation.com. tnvacation.com. And it's, you can self-select what kind of interests you have, you know, so you can go and find out if it's outdoor recreation, cultural heritage, music festivals. We have just about every kind of way to kind of earmark what you like to do, put an itinerary together, save it, send it to somebody else so they can see if they want to go with you on that trip. And I think it's fun for Tennesseans to actually get out and find out about other parts of Tennessee.
Right.
I mean, it's a great place to come. People come from all over the world to Tennessee now. So when you are right up close to something, sometimes you don't see how cool it is.
Yes.
And so I think it's really neat when they see with these Discover Tennessee Trails and Byways just how many wonderful things there are. And you can go online with tnvacation.com and get in and find out about those trails too.
And you've done, under your leadership, you've started several initiatives like the Tennessee Trails and Byways, but also the Tennessee Civil War trails, right?
And I had somebody that, I wish I could tell you I came up with all these great ideas. It was usually somebody who had a passion for this, and they just would want to bring it to my attention. A person, Lee Curtis, who has been with the state for 30-some years, from Hendersonville, grew up in a Civil War era home that was used actually as a hospital during the Civil War, Monthaven, and she said, there are just so many things about the Tennessee Civil War history that you would find fascinating. I need to let you know about that. And I'm like, okay, like I'm trying to figure out all these things about Tennessee, but Union-occupied Confederate territories, Confederate-occupied Union territories, last to secede, first to get back in the Union. You've got the vice president of, to Lincoln is from Greenville, Tennessee. You've got one, but it's a Confederate state. I mean, what is all this?
Right.
And there are so many battles that went through, and just devastating things that happened, horrific battles that happened here. That changed the course of just where the war was going, and kind of brought it to an earlier end than it might have been. And I think when she kind of went through that with me and said, there's this thing called the Civil War Trails. It's based out of Charlottesville, Virginia, but there are 4 other states involved: Maryland, North Carolina, and West Virginia, and Virginia. And I think we need to be a part of that. And I said, I'd like to look into that. Well, I have this guy that can meet you at such and such, I think, because we were going to a conference, and we had a breakfast together, and I was very intrigued. But I knew the thing that had to happen in Tennessee was that it be a Tennessee-based. Right. And coming in from Virginia, they could not import something. It just wasn't going to fly. People are very proud of their history, and they're also, they want to tell it.
Protective about it,
They want to tell it themselves.
Right.
So using the person who is now our state historian, Dr. Carol Van West from MTSU, he is the director of the Tennessee National Civil War Heritage Area. The entire state, the only one in the entire United States that the entire state is a Civil War National Heritage Area, as Congress designated. He's the head of that, and so it's under the Park Services, under the Secretary of Interior. He is a wealth of information, and Lee said, let's get with him, kind of tell him our ideas about this, and in doing that, we put together a working committee for the Civil War sesquicentennial, which at that time was years away, so it seemed like, you know, that's going to be, we got plenty of time. Boy, time flies.
Yes.
And we put the committee together then, and as a part of the marketing piece of the committee, we started looking at the Civil War Trail, brought in the Department of Transportation. Governor Bredesen gave us permission to use enhancement grant funds from the Department of Transportation, and that was also continued under Governor Haslam. So between the two of them, they allowed us to have $2 million in enhancement grant funds, which enabled us to take this to the local communities, pay the vast majority of any cost to be in their communities with Civil War interpretive sites. And the actual plaques and everything cost about $6,000. We pay about $5,000 of it out of these enhancement grant funds. The rest have to be locally funded, which then everybody's got skin in the game.
Sure.
But then they also, we felt like this needed to be a grassroots thing so that people they would feel that their history had been told in the right way. Their historians work with Dr. Van West, and they put together the history, then we would get those interpretive signs done. And it's taken a while. We launched it in '08, but now we have 277 markers in 74 counties.
Wow.
We will have, by the end of next year, which will be the end of the sesquicentennial, official sesquicentennial, we'll probably have about 400 markers, and we're hoping it'll be in every one of the counties.
That's great. And what a lasting, that's lasting.
Yes, that's a legacy thing that creates economic development for rural areas and metro areas.
Right.
We have done about 1.8 million brochures, and they fly off the shelves, and we're doing another reprint as we speak. And in addition, we had $1 million given to us by the legislature that had been earmarked for the Civil War sesquicentennial, but it had to be used with a building fund, and for $1 million, you wouldn't, you know, what can you build?
Right.
So we thought of using our welcome centers, and we have, it'll eventually, at the end of a couple more years from now, we'll be up to 16. We currently have 13. We're renovating a 14th, rebuilding a 14th. But we have, in the 13 that are currently standing, we have a kiosk, Civil War kiosk. That's a built-in permanent one. It covers a whole wall. It shows the overview of the Tennessee Civil War history, what's specific to that region, what happened in that region, and then where they can get the Civil War brochure, and they can go out into that region and find all those interpretive markers. So that, again, we thought that's a good place to be able to get that kind of that rural development going, that economic development, get people thinking about, I feel good about going off on a country road here because there's something at the end of it that I want to see. Right. And that's what our trails, both the Discover Tennessee trails and our Civil War trails, are meant to do.
Now, you were recently named, and we're going to run out of time before I get to ask you all the things that I want to ask you, but you were recently named the 2013 National Tourism Director of the Year.
Yeah, that was really pretty exciting.
By the U.S. Travel Association, National Council of State Travel Directors. Now, that's by your peers, so that has to feel really
It was a total
special.
shock. It was a total shock. And I had been alerted that I was nominated, which I thought, I mean, that shocked me. And then we have a big event that happened. It was actually this year in Richmond, Virginia. It was announced, and it was just a real thrill. And I credited it at that time, and I will say it today, that I just get to stand up and talk about how great everything is with our department and with this state. It's really the team that I have that makes this happen. They are spectacular professionals, and they know their stuff. You know, the fossil here, as my grandchildren like to call me, I don't know a lot about social media and all of that the way they do. I mean, it's intuitive to them. And that's how we're now getting out to a lot of players. I think this is what makes tourism such a joy to be a part of. It's so collaborative. It's collaborative within our department. Certainly we have to work with other departments in state government, and that was a surprise to me, and I've enjoyed that. But then there are professionals across the state. Each one of them knows their own region better than anybody else. So working with them to create these trails program, which is one of the things that caught the eye of the the National Council of State Travel Directors, those are the things that people go, wow, that was innovative. I'm going, yeah, but it could never have happened if we didn't have these great people that totally got this. So anyway, it was a nice surprise.
Yeah. Well, and media plays a lot into that, I'm sure. The Nashville series has been big on ABC. And,
that has been a gift for the whole state.
Right.
But, I mean, every time it's on, every time it's on. Just an anecdote, I was up at an international travel show in Chicago back in March, and one of my counterparts from Wyoming got up from a dinner, pulled me aside and said, I have somebody sitting at my dinner from Sao Paulo, Brazil. He wants to talk to somebody about bringing a group to Nashville. He's never brought any Brazilians to Nashville or Tennessee. And it was because they started airing the show there. And we ended up having a great conversation. He ended up coming in April for several days, back in May, and they are going to be bringing their trip. They all would come to Florida. That was a huge, huge amount of people from Brazil that were being Florida, and now they're splitting it between Florida and half the time in Tennessee.
Wow.
So, I mean, that was specifically because they had the Nashville TV show in their country.
Right. And I know WCTE is the presenting station for several music
and
series
we thank
that are
you.
out
And
there.
we are so grateful for what you have done to support tourism and our music culture.
Yes,
you know, I just
that's important. Bluegrass Underground, Jammin' and
love
Hippie
those
Jacks,
shows.
Smithfield Fiddlers Jamboree.
Yes.
Those are all out nationally, and we have people that tell us that they come because of the shows.
Absolutely.
And it does celebrate the musical culture. Thank you so much for this time,
Thank
Commissioner.
you.
You just are wonderful. We invite you to come back and discover the Upper Cumberland with us sometime.
I love that invitation. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.